Okay, my name is Tim Stevens, call sign Kilo 5 Tango Bravo Sierra. I've been invited here to talk tonight about GRLevel3, radar display application for casual use or in times of emergency for something much greater than casual use. To begin with, radar is really not hard to read, but it's certainly easy to make it that way. You can see here we're showing a number of different things, and what you're seeing are surface-based CAPE, you're seeing most unstable CAPE, you're seeing METARs, which are those circles, and the wind arrows off of them, 35 miles an hour, or knots, I should say, indicated in the top. You see several counties, you see different warnings applied to these counties. So you can make it look as psychedelic as you wish, but that's really not where you want to start if you're starting out using any kind of radar software. GRLevel3 is one of the packages available from Gibson Ridge Software, and other packages include GRLevel2, GR2 Analyst, GRLevel3, and GREarth. The most interesting one really is GR2 Analyst. With that one, you can look at 3D modeling of a supercell and peel back the layers like an onion and find rotation within a cell as it goes from the ground all the way up through the structure of the storm. And so it's really quite interesting. It was written by Mike Gibson, and I've had the pleasure to speak to him a few times. We'll write with him a few times through email. He used to live in Austin, and he's very much aware of the unpredictable nature of weather here in Central Texas. And so he's really glad we're making good use of it. GRLevel3 uses data streams primarily in the way of level 3 radar data coming from NOAA and National Weather Service. And what makes this application a little bit better than some of the other slicker looking applications is this one, it can be customized to the nth degree to show you exactly what you want to see and how you want to see it. The level 3 data is a relatively small subset of all the data that comes from any given radar installation. Level 2 data is a lot more comprehensive. It has many more pieces of information. It gives all the different slices that are coming from the radar site. But level 3 data just takes a sample of that, presents it for much faster processing. There are a lot of other guides than what I'm going to walk you through tonight. So if you are interested, please keep looking for those. You just Google it, GRLevel3 guide, and you're going to find a ton of information out there written by a lot of smart people. Moving on, some very basic information about radar. The WSR, or Weather Surveillance Radar 88D network, was deployed in 1988. And it transmits with a power of 750,000 watts. Do we have any radio envy in the room? Reflecting signals are interpreted to indicate position, size, composition, and other characteristics of material in the air. And that can be dust, bugs, rain, snow, cars. You just never know. The signal goes out covering a radius of about 90 to 143 to 155 miles, best case. And the return signal is stated in terms of dBz. I had Marita look through some of this last night, and she was asking about that scale. And what it is, that's actually a reflectivity factor based on incoming power at dBm or dB above 1 milliwatt, as well as other spatial considerations. NexRad radar scans from 0.5 degrees to 19.5 degrees going up, and it builds a cross-sectional picture or volumetric scan, which is then processed through a whole lot of different ways through computers. The lowest tilt sees only 25 miles. For the curvature of the Earth, it starts cutting the legs off of what they're seeing. And therefore, that's why we need ground truthing provided by spotters, sometimes chasers, but anybody who's got a Skywarn certificate in their hands, your information is extremely valuable to the National Weather Service because they just can't see down to ground level. And even if they could, sometimes the radar will lie to you. And so the information is extremely valuable. I went backwards. The radar mode is important. That's going to talk about the sensitivity and the way the data is being processed. And on GRLevel3, if you look up in the upper left-hand corner, you'll see VCP and a value. In this case, it's 35, which indicates clear air mode. And so they've got the gain and sensitivity turned all the way up so they can see gnats. The VCP stands for volume coverage patterns, and values are given usually in 2 or 3 digit numbers. It'll be a 3-digit number if they have sales turned on, and there's a note about that a little later on. Higher number indicates higher gain, which also results in fewer scans per hour and higher data quality. You know, I think I have that totally wrong. Higher number of scans. Okay, no, it is. It gives you more scans per hour. Fewer scans per hour. I'm sorry. It gives you 10 scans, scan every 10 minutes, and it gives you higher data quality. It spends more time passing through the area. The lower numbers actually are the ones we're interested in. The lower number values are going to be faster, more frequent, but they also give you lower quality. But that's okay since we're usually looking at some pretty large atmospheric features at the time. In the lower right-hand corner of a GRLevel3 window, you'll see whether or not something called sales is turned on. And what that does, it tells you that the radar is being made to make multiple passes. Perhaps every other or every 2 or 3 scans, it'll go back to the lowest level and resample and try to get a better idea of what's going on at the levels where you might have tornadic development or other features you want to know about that are going on closer to the ground. Level 3 data includes 6 of the 14 scans that I talked about that are available from level 2, and those 6 will get you a good enough picture to know what's going on in our case. When you begin using radar products, especially GRLevel3, I suggest that you go with really simple color schemes, and we'll talk a little bit more about that here in a minute. But you want to eliminate unnecessary background information. GRLevel3 lets you use an underlay of the U.S. satellite image, and it's pretty, definitely, but it also uses up a whole lot of your system resources and adds a lot of colorful distractions. When bad weather approaches, you can turn on and use only the info you need and not everything that's available to you. The image I showed you to begin with is an example of if you're wanting to see where a lot of instability is, there's some useful overlays there. If you want to see where warnings are, those are useful overlays. But when you have a cell coming in that you know is tornadic or has been historically, and it's coming in the area, it's time to focus very carefully on just that information that you're going to be able to relay to emergency services that indicate where potential problems may be. But learning to use GRLevel3 again, or any other radar product, study it when the weather is boring, when there's nothing at all going on. Because how do you know what's bad if you don't know what good looks like? The picture on the right is an example of that was taken a couple of hours ago. We had no meaningful clouds in the area, but what you see there is they have the sensitivity turned all the way up so they can see the furthest. And so what you see is ground clutter, and the purple colors or pink colors in there is actually the road map underlay that I have on mine, and I can show you how to do that another time. But the point to make note of here is when you have all that ground clutter, you'll notice some of it stays stationary with every single scan. Those are likely to be hilltops and tall buildings. And sometimes you're seeing traffic on like 18-wheelers on bridges, particularly if you're looking from the New Braunfels radar site. They have been able to see a large 18-wheelers interfering with their radar. It's not a big deal. Most storms, most big storms coming through, nobody's going to notice it. But these are just features that pop out once their gain is turned all the way up. So how do you know what to watch when there's nothing to watch? GRLevel3 has a feature that's a warning window, and it'll show when there are different things happening around the United States that may be tornado warnings, they may be severe thunderstorm warnings, they may be flash flood warnings, and others. And the green ones there are generally water-based warnings. Many of them happen off the coast around the country. And right now it's lit up pretty good, I think, or it was a little while ago for what's going on in Kansas and Nebraska. Again, try not to use colorful backgrounds. It just creates a whole lot of sensory overload. Now, once you're used to using it, then it might be useful to you, being able to see the terrain below what's happening. And that way you can correlate how storms coming out of the hill country tend to fire up, either when they're coming down and the turbulence is mixing because it's coming to a lower elevation. You could see activity there, but most of the time it's not going to buy you a lot. If you have the opportunity, this is where you can also start adjusting your color palette. Now, a program like Radar Scope will let you do that. I know the Pro version does. You can go in and change the scale, and you can start turning off or making more subdued some of those lower level colors, and they won't confuse the picture. Because if you have everything with the default color scheme, all these blues and greens where there's mist are going to be mixed in with all the yellows and oranges and reds of greatest interest and greatest value. So you can use a PAL file, which is a palette file, to define what these colors are going to be. And once you have it adjusted to your liking, then from there, you'll feel a lot more comfortable about what you're seeing and be a little less confused with what's going on. Bookmark your favorite sites. That would include the New Braunfels site, KEWX, the Granger Williamson County site, KGRK, the San Angelo site, KSJT, and Del Rio, near Del Rio, KDFX. And they all can take a look at what's going on in Central Texas. Now, some of the features I'm going to show you are available with subscriptions to additional data from Allison House. They have a way just to connect in. They give you the settings to connect GRLevel3 to their servers, and that includes the main data stream of all the radar data. Allison House gives you these products. Actually, there's a few more than this, but you can see starting on the left, you can get different radar feeds. GRLevel3 is only going to be able to use the level 3 data, but you just copy the link and you plug it into GRLevel3 in the proper spots, and it'll give you that feed. If you ever do run into problems and you think that you're not getting the data that you need when you want it, or there's a red square that pops up in the lower right-hand corner, GRLevel3, that tells you it hasn't received data in a while, then you can turn off the Allison House stream and go to the National Weather Service server. They give you the same data as far as the main stream coming, but usually during an event, NOAA's servers are getting pounded a lot worse than Allison House. The other overlays include lightning overlays, observations like the METARs that I had described, and those are meteorological observations made at airports around the area. Buoy stations, if you have a hurricane coming in, you can start watching what's happening down in the Gulf by examining what the buoys are reporting. You have some basic model information. You have more hurricane information. You can have storm hunter paths that are plotted onto the radar, and you get all the different models that are saying the storm's going to go this way, and then another model saying, no, it's going to go that way. All that can be plotted on top of the radar. Also, you'll have the mesoscale discussions, watch boxes, and so forth. And then from the Weather Prediction Center, you can get the idea where the frontal boundaries are without looking at METARs and watching the wind shift. And you can do many other things. You see, you can see APRS base station. You turn that on, you'll see everybody has got APRS turned on. You'll see their position on the radar. Moving along, GRLevel3 plus Allison House data will look like what I'm showing in the right illustration there. You can turn it on and off and create overlays and underlays from the radar data that add all this additional information. And it gives you a lot of information in one place that otherwise you're going to have to hunt around the internet to find. Again, I was talking about it can provide a secondary source for level 2 and 3 data that's usually more reliable than what you'll get from the National Weather Service. But the gotcha is that the minimal package is $15 a month. It's a bit steep for a lot of people. If you don't have a really vested interest in getting that kind of data, then maybe it's not for you, and that's completely understandable. At the ESOC, maybe it's something worth investing in because it really does amp up the usefulness of the tool. Also, once you have that account, you can feed it to other apps. It doesn't just have to be GRLevel3. Moving on to some information about the setup. A setup session is something we might arrange in the future, but it's pretty lengthy. Getting the basics going takes almost no time at all. You download the initial version from the grlevelx.com website. It's a much older version. You download it, then you go pay your, what is it, $75 for a license. And then they'll give you a code that will then upgrade it to the most current version. The original instructions I wrote many years ago is at this first link for version 1. And then there's a second one where I added to it to cover more of the feature evolution that's taken place with version 2. The last time I checked the version, it was at 2.9 something. So he's getting pretty close to the end of this version, and I'm interested in what Mike's going to come out with next. Going back to talking about color palettes, the way you would do that is you can, once you've loaded the palette that I'll give you if you're interested, you can store it onto your computer, and you can go to that color table setting that's shown by that first illustration there, and you can just change them. And then if you like having maps, street level maps, things of that nature, if you like having lakes and rivers defined for you, those are other shapefiles that could be loaded, and it'll be done in a window showing on the bottom. And if at any time you need more information, feel free to write to me, k5tbs@hotmail.com. I'll be happy to answer. A note about it, if you're going to start loading all these files, the computer that you use needs to have a bit of horsepower. Excuse me just a second. As an example, the shapefile that defines the state of Texas is 475 megabytes. I'm sorry. It's a really big chunk of data. And when you add street level maps and all that, it literally, if I go off to a radar site that I don't have any of that loaded to, it just switches over in a matter of seconds. When I come back to the GRK site where I have all that loaded, it can literally take 2 minutes before that screen will refresh. But then again, my desktop's kind of an old computer. The color palette that I've been mentioning a few times will require you to have admin rights if you're going to put it on your machine. And the reason is it is a Windows system file. So any kind of antivirus software you have on your computer will probably bark about it. So it's best to have it named as a TXT or any kind of other file, and then drop it into that directory that I'm showing there, program files, x86, GRLevelX, GRLevel3_2, color tables. Drop it in there as a text file and then change the file type. Windows may have a pop-up that says you need admin privileges, and if you have them, all you need to do is tell it yes and move along. And then you go into your GRLevel3 program and you go up here into the color table settings, and that's where you just switch over and select that file. It does not dispose of the original file in case you don't like what you have. And I would like to show you if this thing will fire up. It won't, not like that. I'll show it to you afterward. It's just a text file, and what it shows you is 4 columns of numbers that represent hex values for color on a computer, and they just need to be tweaked. This is a starting point. If you want to play with it further, subdue some colors, make some colors brighter, you're certainly welcome to go in there and play with it any way you want. Okay, before I go on, what questions are there?
Is that, what kind of platform does it run on? Just Windows, or?
Yeah, it's only available for Windows. At one point, Mike Gibson had written a version for Windows Phone, but that was about as far as he was comfortable going away from the Windows desktop platform. And so as far as I know, he's never developed it for anything else. Back when I used to play with Linux, I tried to use Wine, which is an emulator or not an emulator, depending on your belief system. And I could not get it to run on there. I was desperately hoping it would so I could walk away from Windows, but it just didn't happen. And so since I need to use this software, I'm kind of stuck with Windows for life as far as it looks now. What else?
Thank you.
You bet. Okay, if there's not any other questions, let's take a look at some of the imaging. Now, in the week and a half or so leading up to this presentation, I didn't know if we'd have anything to see on radar tonight, so I started taking screenshots and wanted to give you an idea of what they are showing you. So here is a comparison. If you have GRLevel3, you're probably aware you can set up to 4 different panels or panes of radar views on your computer at one time, and you have just gobs of them to choose from. The one that you mainly would see on TV, if you're looking at your favorite TV station watching the weather, is going to be on the left, but they are usually going to show you the composite view, which is all the levels combined together. As I said, you're given 6 slices with GRLevel3, and if you have something that'll do level 2 data, you could have 14 slices, and you can look up and down through the cell. The one that's at the bottom, the first level, is going to show you what is closest to the ground. So generally, that's what you're going to want to look at. There is value, though, to looking up higher at another layer. And one is that it'll help get rid of the ground clutter that piles up on the lower view. But also, if you suspect you're looking at a hole and you're wondering if there's some circulation in there, and it's just a strange looking hole, start looking up through the different layers. And if it continues up, it's usually going to skew to one side or the other, and that's probably real. So it's just something to make note of. If you were using GR2 Analyst, what that would do is you would be able to peel back layers and see a tube actually going up through the supercell. And so looking at it from this kind of a view, it'll just be a hole. So if you see something like that, it might be worth pursuing by chasing some of these other elevations. But anyway, we're looking at base reflectivity at 0.5 degrees on the left, and on the right is vertically integrated liquid. Anybody who has had any discussions with me about preferred views knows that I use the VIL display a lot, because you can have a view like the one on the left and it looks pretty busy. You do have a little purple spot there in that one cell near the middle. But on the right hand, the vertically integrated liquid, it shows you where the real business is. In this particular case, it's at top of scale, indicating it's probably got hail. That little green triangle is solid. It indicates there's probably hail reaching the ground. If I were to mouse over it, you might see additional information. At any rate, when you start seeing large areas with that color of a dark gray, that is not a place you would want to be under. It has literally, I have been staged at a place like near Salado, watching a large gray mass just pop up here, looking at the vertically integrated liquid display. And as I looked to the west, where it was coming from, the sky turned very literally black. I made it out of there and got back before that cell hit, but about 60 seconds after I made it past this one point just south of Salado, headed south, an 18-wheeler went through there and his truck was flipped by that storm as it came across the highway. So you can tell an awful lot by looking at radar and using your gut instincts about what's going to happen after you have built up some experience with the radar. So again, go back to use it when there is nothing to watch, and then from there, build your knowledge base. This is another view showing pretty busy looking base reflectivity on the left. It also has vertically integrated liquid, or VIL, on the right. And it doesn't show a whole lot of activity, but you're starting to see what are called mesocyclone indications on the radar. When GRLevel3 version 2 has a yellow indication like that, it's interesting. It may indicate some pretty good turbulence in the area, but it really won't buy you a whole lot. But you are starting to see that there are indications of circulations in these cells. When you see a red one, a mesocyclone, that's indicating that you have a column of air within a cell that is very likely rotating and rotating pretty consistently up through the structure of the supercell. Also shown on here are local storm reports showing 1 inch and 1.5 inch hail north of Fredericksburg. And this was taken a few days ago. And that was a severe warned storm. Right now, the numbers that we're looking at, the ones of significance are going to be the ones talking about the velocity, 38 knots, 34 knots. These are different types of rotation that are being measured by the system and reported through the software. And then we get to what for anybody who's using the radar would be the crowd pleaser. And I don't know if I can pause this, probably not. But these are TVS indicators, tornado vector signature indicators. Let me state, it does not mean that there is a tornado there. However, the rotation has become significant enough to where it's something you'd want to watch. And it's showing here that the max delta velocity is 53 knots. The elevation, though, where all that is happening is up, around 5,000 feet. At the ground level, though, it's probably doing a pretty good dance down there as well. And so these areas, when you see them pop up, you may see them pop up for like 1 or 2 frames and then they're gone, which was the case in this one. It means that there is a lot of turbulence there. There's occasional rotation, but it does not necessarily mean there will be a tornado. A few minutes before this meeting tonight, I was looking at the storm in Nebraska and they had wind speeds over 100 knots in some of their TVS signatures. And I think I got a screenshot of it if it's gone. This was one I was watching a week ago. Don't even know where it was. I don't believe it was in Texas. But in this one, we're starting to see what might be either an inflow notch, which will look a lot like this. You'll see the storm kind of starts creating a V shape, and that's where the wind is coming in. And some of the chase has been in, we'd go stand in the notch, and those would be like 70, 80 miles an hour, and it will blow your hair around pretty good. But in this case, you're really starting to see that the inner detail here is showing that it's starting to wrap. Now over here in this view, this is the storm relative velocity view. And it is not a dual pole product, and I'll get into dual pole another time. But this is one of the original products that was available with WSR 88, and it shows wind direction differences. Here you're going to have wind going in one direction, and the green you're going to have wind going the other direction. And if you start to look at it close enough, you'll start to see what looks like a yin-yang symbol, where you have part of it bleeding over this way, part of it bleeding over that way. That's when things are starting to get interesting and probably doing so at ground level. When things get real busy, it's easy to say, well, I need a whole lot of different views to understand what's going on, but you're also biting off a lot. That's an elephant and you're just nibbling on its toenail then. This thing, you're zoomed in, it doesn't look too bad, but there are plenty of cases where you've got a very busy screen just with one panel, and then you put 4 up there and it divides your attention a whole lot. So get used to looking at 1 or 2 panels at a time before you start looking at 4. But in this one, we have base reflectivity, which is showing you basic rain intensity and the structure of the storm. If in GRLevel3, if you don't tweak the colors too much, when you're looking at a yellow area like that, that's not an area normally you want to drive in for very long, over 40 or 50 miles an hour. You could, but you're going to have difficulty seeing. By the time you get into orange and red at night, you definitely wouldn't want to be doing that unless you really had to, because that's going to be a very significant downpour. There's times where you might see some of this other scale here. There's some purples and pinks and white. That's when it's getting to top of scale, and that's a very, very heavy downpour that you just are taking a great risk to drive in. But it's good information to report to law enforcement so that they'll know where they need to focus on potential traffic problems. Here's another SRV, storm relative velocity display that shows another how you can see the outline of the thing. It's starting to look like it has a wrapping appearance, and the wind here seems to support that. Note, by the way, radar does not see wind. It never sees wind, it sees what's in the wind. It could be dust, it could be bugs, it could be rain, but that's what it's reporting. So if it's just a blue sky day and it's showing you something, you're mainly looking at ground clutter and bugs. Down here in the lower left, we have the correlation coefficient display, and that is a dual polarization product. And its biggest use to me, and I'm sure that a lot of these products are new enough to where people have had to figure them out. There's white papers out there that describe the best way to use them. But for me, what I found is if there is a debris ball caused by tornado that's wreaking havoc and creating a lot of damage, it's going to show up here as a blue blob right in the heart of the area where the tornado has touched down. Finally, this one over here, this is KDP is what it's listed as. And if you look up here, the top of this ribbon is what Windows would call it. You see the KDP area, you drop down there and you'll get these different slices of the storm to see that. And the intensities that are showing the size of the raindrops. So you can have mist, you can have an average rainfall, but if you have a very intense rainfall, which usually will preclude something major, then that's where it helps draw your eye to that area and helps you to stay with it. Okay, and there is another thing you can do with the GRLevel3. You can find earthquakes. The Allison House data gives you earthquake data. They give you fire risk data on a hot August windy day. If there is wind in August, you'll start seeing little fire symbols popping up out through the hill country, and it'll say focus over here because there could be something coming. Okay, that's the extent of this slide deck. Do we have any questions before I have to switch computers?
Does it require any special hardware like a fast processor or like lots of RAM?
I'd say ideally, yeah. But the notebook that I use if I go on a chase is actually a Dell Latitude D630, which is a pretty old notebook, and it does not have a whole lot of ponies under the hood. So if you don't have a fast computer and you know you're going to need to use it, then it's best that you get it started, warmed up, updated hours before you're going to have to use it so that it's humming along pretty nicely by the time you have to really start relying on radar.
Thank you.
You're welcome. What else?
Hey, Tim, it's Terry. I have a question
Terry.
for you there. Two of them. One is, and when you first pull it up, a lot of times we have Skyward nets and people are pulling up the radar pretty quickly. Can you show them how they pull down the quick data feed or the data dump that goes into it? And then also, what are the panels that you would think are most appropriate to use or have up? Is most of us aren't as understanding as you are this, but what would be good panels to use?
Well, probably those four would do it for me. The VIL is something that I just rely on all the time, and actually, I see I'm not even showing it here because that tells me where to focus on the heaviest part of the storm. It shows the core of a supercell. That doesn't mean it's a hail core, but it does mean where all the activity is happening, where the heaviest amount of rain usually is happening. Where the strongest part of the storm is, and it's going to be generally the place where the most damage is going to occur on the ground. Once hail starts to fall, that's when you're going to see that thing go top of scale. As far as the values, it'll turn a gray color, and that will indicate that's where the damage is likely to happen if you're going to try to figure out where hail is going to be an issue. I don't have a lot to show you. I didn't get a whole lot more imaging for this, but coming back to, well, that one. This area, it shows you, when you're relying on a really busy screen, and if you're driving and doing this, this is why I started reducing color palettes and everything. Had to get rid of everything that could possibly distract. And being able to focus on the VIL display just made it so much easier, because you can see your position on here. GRLevel3 will let you put your GPS position on it. If you have a GPS antenna to plug into it using a USB. And you can see your relation to in position to the storm. Others can see it too if you're sending it through APRS. It's been a number of years, but I was talking back to a repeater in Bastrop. I'm reporting I was out on, in South Austin somewhere, and they were calling me asking me where to send the body bags, because I was heading right into a storm that had a very large VIL. It had a lot of circulation, and it was just ugly. But I had the opportunity the next night to give them the same question when it went through Bastrop. So, but the VIL and the base reflectivity are just going to be, for me, the default screens to have up. When I'm starting to suspect there might be more rotation that is apparent from these displays, then I'll add the SRV or storm rotational velocity. And also the base velocity movement is also another one. It's very similar to SRV, and sometimes the colors are a little bit easier to look at. What else? If you're ready to jump over and actually start looking at radar, it's going to take me a minute to swivel seat over to it, and I'll drop sharing on this one. And if you'll give me a minute, you can take a break. Those of you at home can run to the facilities or whatever. And since I'm on my work computer, I'm seeing I'm missing a meeting that's happening out of Kuala Lumpur. I'm not terribly upset about it.
Tim,
Okay.
can I ask another question?
Yeah.
We had a question here that says, where do you find the VIL, a vertically integrated liquid, on the to select it to bring the window up?
I'll show you that when we get over to radar here in a moment.
Okay.
It's going to be under derived products. It's not a direct observation. It's actually a calculation by what the data is showing the computer.
We had one other question. You're going back and forth between the screens that are where you had a lot of the data gone, and you have picking up more of the radar sites. How easy is it to swap back and forth between those two?
Between sites? If you don't have any extra data, that is the way of street maps or shape files and things like that. If you don't have any attached to a particular site, and that's how you do it in GRLevel3. For every site that you want to see streets at, you have to load the street map to it.
Oh, I'm sorry. You were showing the vertically integrated liquid in a very uncluttered screen versus a comparison to one that had a large amount of data and the drizzle and mist and things like that. Between those two screens, is it possible to switch back and forth, or once you pick one, you're pretty well set unless you get another file?
Oh no, you can pop through the screens very quickly.
Okay.
Yeah, one thing you have to remember, if I could butt in a little bit, this is Jim, is you have to click on the panel you want to change first, because there's been many a time where I've been playing with it. I go and change what product I want to see, and I'm putting it in the wrong panel. And Tim, if you want to see some fun stuff if you're bringing up GRLevel3, pull up site Kilo Golf Lima Delta. There's some good data on that screen.
Yeah, you might have to remind me of that here in a minute once I switch computers. Okay, I don't know that I'm answering the question really that you're looking for. You were wondering though how to pop through. Let me go back here. So if I were looking at a dual pane screen rather than 4 panes, I could easily just click on, this panel over here, go up here, choose what I want to see, select it, and that's what will appear here, and it just takes a matter of seconds.
Right. I think I was looking at trying to look at the same, talk about the question being, looking at this same screen of data, can you put two of them up, say, and have one that has the very restrictive data coming in where you're looking at the more intensity of it versus one that has a broader view of what's going on as far as the amount of rain and all the clutter?
Well, there's two ways for me to answer that. One is you can only run one instance of GRLevel3 at a time. I mean, physically it's possible to run more than one, but Mike has said that if he catches when you're doing that, he's going to charge you double. But if you have other radar apps like Radar Scope, My Radar, and GRLevel3, you can have them all open at once and have different views and different places going. And I know Radar Scope doesn't have a limitation on how many instances you run. I'll have it running on my phone, a tablet, my computers all at the same time sometimes. But let me switch over to the other screen, and then it might be easier to point click and see if that can address your questions. Is that okay?
I think we're good. Thank you.
Okay, give me 1 minute and I'll stop sharing here and I'll pop up on my other account. Thanks a lot. Okay, are you able to hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Let's start sharing the screen, and it's going to say which screen. Well, I've only got one on this one, so. Well, it looks like I got to pick something, so. Let's go with the radar, share it. All right, so right now, this was much more entertaining looking a little while ago when we were beginning this. So are you able to see 4 panels?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. I'm gonna play this. So I started picking this up a bit earlier, figuring that this was going to get strong. And what we have here is I'm showing the, excuse me, while I play with my headset. This is be a base reflectivity, the normal view, the one you'd see on TV, except that it has got the lowest tilt selected. If you want to go to a composite, composite, you can, and it'll combine all 6 levels that are available on this radar application, and it's going to make it look big and fat, and it'll be difficult to find detail in, but it'll give you a sense of just how big this monstrosity might be. Over here is that vertically integrated liquid or VIL view. And so here at this point right here, it's getting, if you look down here where my mouse is circling, you'll see that when I hold it over there, you'll see what the value is at 79.7 kilograms per square meter. And so you see that that's the top of scale. That is probably dropping some pretty good hail. And here you see a hail report, local storm report, or LSR, of 1.75 inches. So when you report something in, they start popping up here on radar screen. Now here is a TVS, or a tornado vector signature, and it's showing that the max delta velocity is 70 knots. So you have a combined set of winds at different levels going different directions, and their combined values are 70 knots. I believe that when I was looking at it earlier, there were some 80s. Yeah, there was one. And so we had a max delta velocity of 131 knots. That means that on the ground, it might have been doing 60 one way, 70 another way, or this says possibly 60 and 80. So that's getting to be a pretty strong breeze. It's got a purple circle, so not the red, but that we talked about during the presentation, but it actually has a purple one, plus it has the purple triangle. And so that there's a lot going on with that one. Now, here we get down to this panel here in the lower right is the storm rotational velocity. And a lot of times when you hear the TV people or whatever saying that they have found a couplet, the couplet is going to be where the wind is represented to be fairly strong going in one direction, as well as fairly strong coming back the other direction. And that point where they intersect is going to be the couplet. Right now in this little area down here where my mouse is moving around, that is showing wind speed. So up here it's showing 50 knots going this way, 27 knots going the other way. If you hear us on the radio saying we're measuring a gate-to-gate speed, we're going to be combining those values. And so here, your connection is unstable. Well, so am I. Here we have 48 knots, 41.8 knots, and over there we have minus 44.7 knots. So that's probably going to combine somewhere around 80 knots. And so that's important because it means the circulation is serious and maintaining from one frame to the next as we follow this storm across an area. And so it's remaining consistent. Now, a live view shows that it's pretty much weakening. Now, when I was saying, how do you know what to watch? There's nothing to watch. You can go to this list here, and it's going to give you a list of active warnings around the country. Just double click on it, and it's going to bring you to something going on. In this case, what is that? Panhandle? No, it's up around Kansas. So here we're saying there's a tornado reported. It's a local storm report. Land spout tornado spotted briefly near intersection of road. The source was a National Weather Service employee, so it's fairly accurate, I'm sure. Also, you see here, one of the things you get with Allison House is also a radar status. I see your yawn, Chuck. I'm sorry. You see a radar status. Here, the green one, it's showing that level 3 data is up, but the one on the right is red, is level 2 data is down. So if you were unable to get data out of a certain place, you could look on that and it'll tell you why. Also, if your screen freezes after a while and you're not getting anything, then you may take a look at the radar station status and understand that, well, it's gone offline, which happened just the other day when we had a really good storm, it looked like, coming towards New Braunfels, and they took it offline. That was an old trick that the Fort Hood people used to do, the GRK radar. Every time you needed it, they took it offline. So thanks a lot, guys. So when it happened for New Braunfels, I looked it up and it says they were taking it off for maintenance. I couldn't imagine what they were doing with some big storm coming at them. Anyway, so the structure of the storm is we're seeing normally your tornadoes, when they happen, they could happen on the leading edge, but the real big ones generally happen out towards the rear end and out on the south side of it. That's not written in stone. It can always be anywhere, but generally this is just where it's going to happen. Also, if you have a line of thunderstorms, dot, the one on the south is usually going to get the most fuel, and therefore it's going to be the largest, but there's so many exceptions to that, especially last week when I was trying to find one to show you. It seemed like the north storms were getting all fueled up and having a great time. So again, it's not a hard and fast rule, but if you were out chasing or you were trying to plan a trip and you wanted to know what to avoid, that's the kind of thing to take into consideration. We have another TVS signature here, 70-ish knots. Over here, we have a very large, probably a hail core here. And that triangle there indicates there's a very high probability of hail. When it says the size and it's not a local storm report, then it's telling you the size of the hail aloft and not what's reaching the ground. Usually what reaches the ground is going to be half of what it reports aloft. So that 2.5 inches is probably going to be seen on the ground as 1.25 inches. Again, this is the coefficient correlation. It is a very noisy looking thing a bulk of the time. It is looking for consistency in the radar data. The blue over here doesn't really mean anything, but if in the middle of all this activity, you started seeing blue chunks here, this kind of thing, if you started to see a larger blue area, there's a very high likelihood that that's a debris ball. So something else to show that there's damage on the ground with actually without making direct observation. Okay, Terry, you had some other questions that had something to do with the menus. I think popping around different kinds of data. Was that correct? Are you able to hear me?
Yes, I'm sorry, I had to run to the back of the room. We and got one.
Oh, that's okay.
Answered.
That's okay. So I've gone through a number of things here. By the way, I'll yammer half the night.
Oh, it's all yours.
If you encourage me. So, that one's an 11. Wonder what that means. Okay, 110 knots, 2 different directions. It looks like at 1,100 feet. That's pretty close to the ground. So that one's starting to become something.
Okay,
They haven't warned on it.
I do remember one of those questions.
Go ahead.
When you can see hail in the storms, can you explain it? You said a little bit earlier, but where you can see some hail cores. I think it's been correlation coefficient screen, if I remember right.
You mean the hail core?
Kind of indicators.
The VIL is where you're going to see the best indicator of hail. A big top of scale. When I say top of scale, there's that 80 kilogram per square meter or meter squared. It's at the top of scale right here, and you don't see that too often. I mean, you see it on radar, but you don't personally see it that often. If you did, your car would be rather bruised. And so that's what's going on in those situations. If I'm having any problems being heard, let me know. I keep getting a note here pop up saying my internet's getting unstable. I also want to draw your attention to a couple of areas here. Go ahead.
Tim, the interconnections, the connection is a little bit rough. If you keep it slower, it's easier to keep up with the cutouts.
Okay, I apologize. Well, that's unfortunate. Let me see which network I'm on. I've got 4 networks here at home, and that one should be a pretty reliable one. So the structure of this cell here we're looking at, I'm not seeing a really great wrap type of indication that you might if you're going to see a tornado form. However, that doesn't mean there isn't one. You've got several opportunities for them to form. You've got one here where you see this thing kind of curl around. You see the general structure kind of curling around. And then you have something here that if I look at wind speeds, it could be an inflow notch, but it kind of looks like it's actually some degree of rotation up in here. And these TVS signatures indicate that that's probably what's going on. For example, look here, you have a very strong flow coming counterclockwise up underneath, and here it's rotating counterclockwise on top as well. So this whole area right here looks like it's rotating. And here you have a rather large blue spot. Jim, I think that you actually use correlation coefficient more than I do.
Yes, sir.
Your thoughts about that?
Yeah. So if you were to like zoom out a little bit, one thing that I've noticed, and I've been verified by the National Weather Service guys at Skywinds and stuff, keep zooming out to where you can kind of get a good overview. You'll see like a line in the correlation coefficient. you check where the radar site is, and you can draw a straight line. You could see it coming down from the radar down to the southwest. You see like a line of stuff. Well, if you follow that line, too far. If you follow that line back towards the radar site, where that line stops is where your heaviest stuff's going to be. I usually watch correlation coefficient for that kind of stuff, and then I bring up KDP, the phase differential, because that'll show me most of the red and the darker bland colors. It's just normal rain, but when you start seeing the greens and the yellows and the oranges and everything getting real bright, that would tell me, like, I'm looking at mine right now of the same storm you're looking at, and on the northwest side of the storm, I'm seeing oranges and darker oranges. I would seriously say there is some hail right around there, and probably some good sized stuff too. I'm watching this thing forming up, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's a tornado on that southern end where everything's picking up. Just watching the SRV and I don't think you mentioned it, but the difference between BV of base velocity and SRV, storm relative velocity, is the SRV will take into account which way the storm is moving, like the whole thing, and subtract that out, so you actually see what's going on with the storm itself. That's what was it Paul Ure or one of them guys explained it to me real well. That's the difference between BV and SRV. But yeah, with correlation coefficient, you can kind of like aim, if you put a ruler starting at the radar site up in the upper left, and you see those lines coming down to the southwest, like over Winona. If you follow those back up to right about where that 2 triangle is, that's going to be about where your heaviest stuff is. Did you also happen to tell them about dropping them? If you right click and place a marker here, so if you go into one panel that you see like all that purple just above that 2, you can put a marker, and that marker will show up in all 4 panes, so you can see, okay, what is this point doing, across all 4 panes, the different data. So that's my input.
Yeah, no, that's good information. Can you hear me okay?
Oh yeah. And
okay, I've switched headsets.
There you got the lightning bolts showing up on your overlay. I'm assuming that's coming from Allison House.
That one is, but
because I was going to say I can offer up, since I'm part of the Blitzertongue network that does the lightningmaps.org project, I have access to the data, and I have on my server a script that every couple of minutes we'll get for the local Williamson County, Williamson, Travis, Central Texas area. You can go in and put in if you go and tell GRLevel3 an overlay, which I can put out a link like on the reflector or something. If you put that overlay in, it'll show you like a lightning bolt with a B, and I think it holds it for like 30 minutes. So, but it refreshes like I think I build the script runs like every 2 minutes. It'll actually overlay what our lightning is going on here from the Blitzertongue lightningmaps.org network.
So let me ask, is that the link that you gave me some time ago, the K5KTF.com Sparks?
Right. Yeah. Sparks.
Because I just turned that on and I'm not seeing any values pop in yet.
It wouldn't be up there. I think it's only for our area down here.
All right. Okay. That makes perfect sense.
I have it set because if I tried to do all of the country, it would hug even my good beefy server. It would probably take it down to its knees. Don't worry about the kids. They're out there playing a game. If you're hearing
sound like somebody was getting skinned alive.
Yeah. No, they're out there. They're playing some game. Whatever, I don't know if it's caught or what, but anyway,
yeah.
So
this
yeah,
starting to look.
The sparks.txt is just for the Central Texas area.
All right,
but it will overlay. If you go to look at lightningmaps.org, and what you see there is what would get overlaid on your GRLevel3.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate it. Are there any other questions? See, one thing I wanted to point out was that depending on the user, you're going to have all kinds of different preferences, and you're going to have different objectives about what you're trying to do. Even if you're both looking at the same storm, you want to report the same information, you're just going to have different ways of seeing it and looking at it and reporting it, and that's okay. Diversity, keep hearing a lot about it. Well, that's one way to do it. So here we can also see we're getting a curvature in here within this kind of a profile. You're seeing the hail core start to wrap as well, and you're seeing the base reflectivity view really wrap around nicely. I say nicely, I feel sorry for anybody who's there. But this is just different views of the very same thing, but they all tell you something different. I had mentioned dual polarization. It's not black magic, but I had used all the standard views for so long. I tend to prefer them, and that's why I rely so much on VIL. It could be that if I studied any of these others a lot longer, I'd cotton to them. I just haven't. And so, but there is good information to be had all through this. What other questions are there? And Terry, if we do run out of questions and all that, you had mentioned we might do this again. One thing that I do want to do is get some of the color files and any other place files you might want. You can find these on the internet. They are there, but I can bring what I've got, put them on a couple of memory sticks, and for anybody who wants to bring in a notebook, we'll install it and get you set up.
And I have some things too, like for the estimated rainfall, the standard default for GRLevel3 is like what, 5 inches, Tim?
Yeah, I switch between them. I use yours.
So like my storm total rainfall, I think by default they need the rain. The scale only goes to 5 inches. We can obliterate that in like one good storm here in Central Texas. I've made up a total different scale colors, the scale and colors, that it goes to 16 inches. And Harvey, actually, the 16 inches is white. I had huge splotches during Harvey that was, huge white areas. So sometimes that's not even enough, but I can make that available as well. If you're looking at, radar estimated rainfall, it can open your scale up to 16 inches. Which I found helpful a few times.
Yeah, and interestingly, mine broke. Anytime I try to use that, go to rainfall, look at, let's see which one on this one here. It just doesn't give it to me anymore. And I can try it with any source, and it's just stopped reporting it. And down here, it says next update, so soon, and it just never does. And so I don't know what's going on there. Yep.
Yes, I'd like to get the color files. What I'd like to be able to do is have something that's consistent so that when people are seeing the same thing, if they want to, I mean, everybody personalizes their own once they understand it, but it'd be nice to have it consistent across the board when we have different people sharing that control of things. The other thing was, I know Jim's got some files for that kind of stuff, but maybe we could put, is it possible to get those and put where we can able to download them from our website or something? Is that an acceptable solution, or does it need to be something that you have interface with?
Yeah, no, I'm not possessive about anything here.
Yeah, we'll give you credit. We give you credit for it.
Yeah, whatever you want. Now, can you see the browser that I'm showing now? The LSSN site?
We see the 4-panel screen.
Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah, this is just a second here.
And by the way, Tim, your storm total precipitation is not broken. It is broken elsewhere, because I just went to mine and it's doing the downloading next update. It's not, and I'm looking at the same storm up there in Kansas.
Yeah, it's been doing that to me for months now.
Yeah. Now 1 hour rainfall was working. Looks like 3 hour is not, because I'm not seeing anything on 3 hour, and storm total is busted too. So
yeah,
something's broken there.
Yeah,
I don't interrupt y'all for just real quick for a couple of questions. We're down to about 5 minutes left. And what I was in my mind, what I was going to do is maybe if Tim, if you're available for next month, I originally thought you do more basic stuff tonight, but you went into both, basic and more advanced type things. Is there something more you'd like to present next month, or have you covered most of the things that you were looking at?
The only thing that I would do is that I can imagine doing is sitting down to spend more time on separate features and helping people getting systems set up. Beyond this, it really takes a whole lot of time that each individual will apply to doing it. And again, when you're bored silly, and when there's nothing to look at, it's actually a good time to go look. First,
Right,
get
okay.
familiar with the ground clutter. Second, find other spots to compare to. And all I'm showing here real quick is just that you can get radar on our website. But if you have no other option, you can download Windy. It's free. You can get it free for the computer, for the phone and all that. And it is customizable through the teeth. I mean, you can just,
What is Wendy?
it's a radar app, and I have it integrated into the LSSN website so that you can turn on wind, you can turn on all these other things. And so right here, I've just switched. Are you able to see the website that I'm showing?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. I never know.
Yeah, it's hard to tell.
That's why I switched to the other computer for most of what I've been doing. But you can go through here and turn on all these different layers, and then you could say that's not good enough. I want more layers, and it'll give them to you. And you can turn on cloud cover. You can turn on fog. You can turn on water swells, and just it's infinitely adjustable, and it's free. So you can go to our website if you like and set up a way you like to do it. And you can just look around the country at radar if you want. But you can also download it. And there's a link right embedded in here. If you were to click on it, it would take you to their webpage and you can download it. But right now, your internet connection is unstable. Yeah, I've heard that message before.
And Zoom has a tendency to do that to people.
Yeah, it does. And I don't usually use my home computer for this, but it was the only thing I had GRLevel3 set up this way.
Yeah, I had a couple things I want to add into this.
Go ahead.
For everybody that's on here, a lot of things we do for our Skywarn nets is we've taken a pretty much a policy that we're running for first person reports for things. And the radar we use is a lot of times to figure out what's going on or to answer some questions or to kind of prepare people for what's coming. But as far as providing reports to the served agencies, occasionally I've done some things where we worked with the sheriff's department where they had people out and they didn't have the radars running type thing. But they're getting better at what they're doing there. But for the most part, a lot of our agencies have this kind of radar or something else they can put on that. So we're looking for first person reports on that just for the net controls and all and the participants that are looking. The other thing was using this program is something that we brought to you as a service to bring to you because several of us, because of Tim and Jim, have brought up to us as far as a good package to use. And I use it on this time of year about almost a daily basis, every couple of days, to use as a background. Radar scope's another one, like Tim said. So it's not saying you have to get something like this. It's a $75 fee or something like that for a lifetime. Just make sure you don't lose the code. You lose the code, it's another $75. Or if you put it on more than one computer at the same time. So that's kind of things with there. We're getting close to the end. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to thank Tim. We'll talk to him about where he comes in next month because he covered so much for us today. We were giving a little more time there. But what I didn't say earlier is Tim is the lead for the Lone Star Spotter Network, LSSN. And Tim, I believe your what's the address to your website?
Thank you. It's lssn.us. And yes, it's Lone Star Storm Spotters Network. It has 3 S's, but we only use 2, and it wasn't my idea. It went back years. But lssn.us.
And you guys run a net on Monday nights at 7:30?
It's 8 o'clock on the 08 machine.
Okay, on the 147.08 repeater. So everybody wants to participate for that. Tim gives an update for whether things coming up, things of that nature, and check in. It's good to get with Tim. Y'all have heard Jim a lot of times running that control and getting input for things, which I don't realize is a lot of times I'll talk to Tim or get input from him, or he comes and provides something for us that we're giving input on the storms because he has a tendency to pull things together from what he does from different sources and combines them. So it's good information for when we're running our nets and things. Yeah. So since it's 9 o'clock, I'm going to have to go ahead and close us off here.
Could I say one last thing?
Thank you, Tim, and thanks for your input, Jim Kinter.
Could I say one last thing?
We had one more thing, Tim.
Yeah. Nothing you have heard tonight comes from anybody who has a meteorology degree. Okay. so you get what you pay for, but Jim, me, all of us that have this background are more than willing to help anytime we can. So really appreciate the opportunity and look forward to seeing you.
Yeah. And part of what y'all will hear is as things go more for the spring, usually in the years, we'll have a storm coming in. And when the storms, the nets are running pretty tight, things are happening. We run real tight conversations and short. Sometimes in lulls, you'll hear us kind of ask questions or talk and discuss something that's going on. It's a good time to kind of pay attention, pull yours out and watch and learn. And we try to be careful because we have agencies listening to us. But it's one of those things where it's a good thing. But since it's 9 o'clock, we're going to have to get out of the ESOC. Thanks for everybody that was here. Thanks for everybody that participated and presented tonight. It's greatly appreciated. Special thanks to Michael Moody, W5ALE, because he spent quite a bit of time getting all these computers and things set up here tonight outside his normal work activities. So thanks for all that, for everyone for attending. Is there any questions we have from anybody before we shut down, since we've gone for a while here? Any input from anyone? Okay, then everybody should be able to find the unmute button by now, and we'll call it a night. Thanks everybody for showing up here. We'll have more information coming out.